Welcome to the Brooklyn podcast with yours truly, Anthony Puccio. My co-host, Colin Helwig. Colin, the Brooklyn Nets are 4-4 through 8 games. We're not a tenth of the way of the season yet, but they're 4-4. They're fourth in the East right now. Better than anticipated, to the point where SportsCenter and ESPN actually posted about it on Instagram. How are you feeling? What are you thinking? Give me some of your thoughts.
Dude, these are sunny skies in Nets world. I thought about it the other day, and I personally think that this is the best position right now at 4-4 in November, specifically in November. This is the best position you've been in as a Nets fan, maybe since they traded Kevin Durant, in terms of you are getting fun basketball to watch, but there's still enough track out in front of you where hey, I really want Cooper Flagg. I really want Ace Bailey. I can still make that happen so easily. So you're able to enjoy these wins and, enjoy watching your team, lock in with them every night. But nothing has been jeopardized yet in terms of the team's future. If you think things have been jeopardized yet, I think you're tweaking, but we'll get to that later. What are you thinking?
Right. I mean, look, again, 8 games through. Last year, this was a team that was 10-8, 10-9. I don't want to be premature, but when we were doing our off-season podcast, we were talking in our analysis, everything. It was about establishing an identity. It was about a lot of focus on Jordy Fernandez and how he can get these guys to compete. And right now, they're not only competing, but they're winning games. For the tank, again, it's a long season. The lottery odds have changed. We're not deeming this a playoff team, but right now, this is fun, competitive basketball to watch. Um, so for me, I'm having a lot of fun. I'm somebody that didn't really want them to lose games on purpose. They're not losing games on purpose, and quite the opposite.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the best part about this, in my opinion, the difference between when the Nets kind of were like they were in the playoff picture last year. Obviously, that was their goal, but I did not see a lot from Jordy Fernandez. Makes me feel like he has the chops to be a great coach for the next however many years you want to put in front of us. What I've seen in terms of the way he schemes up his offense, the way he does the two-sided things where he's like a player's coach where he seems to motivate his guys and they rally behind him and they fuck with them, for lack of better words. And he also seems like a smart guy where he is dialing up schemes. Their out of bounds plays are so much more advanced than they used to be. It makes you feel like, going into the season with the draft picks, it was like future, future, future. Now we're seeing future, and it's not all just like totally based on the present. Like we can see a building block for the future that makes you feel like this is going to be something that's going to last for a while, and this is something that's going to be good.
Right, right, and we've discussed how important this hire was. This is the seventh head coach since they've moved to Brooklyn. They need to find stability at the main leadership spot, and that's exactly what Jordy is doing right now. So my takeaways through 8 games, through 10 games, is that this is a team with a good head coach. Like this is
Yes.
somebody that you want to play for. You've seen it with veterans that are Dennis Schroeder and guys like that, and you've seen it with the young guys that have a chip on their shoulder. Now, for
Hmm.
me, Colin, I feel that I underestimated the value of having a team and a head coach that has a chip on their shoulder. When I came on this podcast and I gave my preseason prediction on win totals, I said 16 on the podcast. I wrote 19 on Nets Daily. Now, obviously, all it takes is just a bad stretch of games, and that's very much feasible. But right
Hmm.
now, it looks like they're going to surpass all of these expectations. Their over under was set at 19 and a half before the season started. But I gotta admit, I bumped my head on the wall, and I severely underestimated in this day and age. Maybe 10 years ago, we wouldn't be having this conversation, but in the NBA in 2024, again, if you have effort, you have an identity, you have a group of guys, a cohesive group of guys that are
Hmm.
playing a style of ball and buy into that, you know, amazing things can happen. And I think
Yeah.
we're seeing that. It's still early, but we're seeing that.
Well, I don't blame you for losing sight of that. And I think there's a lot of Nets fans who are like that too, because the 7-Eleven era programmed us to say the coach just needs to be like a therapist. And
Right.
Jordy Fernandez happens to have a PhD in like an athlete psychology. So I guess he checks that box too. But when you got rid of Kenny Atkinson and then came in Steve Nash, who was like, oh, he's this like nice guy. He's going to be able to like connect with the players. He's a young guy. And then you go from, all right, that's not working out. All right, Jock Vaughn has a good relationship. I believe him and Kyrie were close when they were together. Like, all right, we're programmed to think like, all right, we got rid of Kenny A, who was a great X's and O's guy and really a great coach by all standards. It was just that
Yeah.
Katie and Kyrie weren't buddy with him.
Right.
So we were like, okay, this is the route we're choosing. So we're just going to buy in because you want your team to succeed. As a fan base, it's like, all right, we're just going to buy in with what the team is doing. And what the team was doing at that point was valuing guys who are, all right, I'm a brouhaha, like keep everyone happy. I'm just like a chill coach guy and
Right.
let the talent carry the team. So
Right.
that's been crammed down our throats for years as this is how we're going to win and this is how we're going to get forward. Now we're back to the Kenny A days. So it's a lot of that kind of
Yeah.
nostalgia is coming back very much so.
Yeah.
So it's an adjustment, you know.
Yeah, you certainly you go on X or whatever platform it is that you use to talk about the Nets, and you don't see people complaining about Jordy. You don't see them saying how his rotations are bad. Like people, the fan base seems happy with him right
Mhm.
now, and their angriest part about him right now is that they're winning basketball games.
Yeah.
So it could be a lot worse. I think in the Nets world situation, this is the best case scenario. But Colin, I'm going to bring it into the next point, and it's going to be a little bit premature. But do you find this to be sustainable? And if so, do they be are they going to be buyers or sellers? Again, this is very very premature. But if this sticks up, are they going to be at the trade deadline looking at
We're
names?
we're gonna find out soon is the thing because we play the Celtics are next, then it's the undefeated Cavaliers. I think there's some West teams mixed in there. There's 2 games against the Knicks, both of them at MSG. It's gonna the next 6 or 7 games will likely give us something of an answer. To answer your question though, no. Like I'm a realist at the end of the day. I don't think it's
Yeah,
sustainable as in the Nets are gonna go 500. I do think everything that's everything that I've seen has told me that they will exceed expectations, but there's a little bit of a gray area between exceeding expectations, exceeding a 19 win total, and staying 500 for the course of the season, and to the point where they're being buyers. Now, that word being a buyer, it has a bit of a loaded definition. I think, say the Nets are still kicking at it, they're in the play-in around like the 8 seed. I could see them being buyers in terms of where they're going to go out and try to add guys, but it's only going to be guys who fit in their timeline.
right,
Like they would still be sellers in the sense where maybe
right,
they're going to try to offload Dorian Finney-Smith, but maybe they will also trade 2 second rounders if there is a team out there that has a player like a Zaire Williams who they're like, here's another guy that we can take in. So maybe not buyers in the sense of when we think about like the MLB trade deadline, we're like, oh, we got to land a starter and we
right,
need a big lefty bat. Like it's not going to be like that, but I could see them being aggressive and saying, let's get another guy who fits our timeline. And if we keep chugging along, if we keep winning games, he also makes sense for that too.
right. And I think if you look at Sean Mark's track record, he really doesn't make big trades at the deadline. He
Unless
really
except when his starting shooting guard is tanking games against the Sacramento Kings.
right, right. With the exclusion of James Harden, he really has not made a significant trade outside of that. It's been marginal, smoothing out the edges. I think Sean Marks likes to see where his team is at, assess, and then reevaluate come the summertime. So I don't think anything big happens, but you wonder about the guys like Schroeder, who we've been hearing all these lovely headlines. I mean, he's been fantastic for this team, and
Unreal.
and
Unreal.
uh, you know, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but like along the lines of a most improved player in the NBA right now, or comeback, this guy deserves some sort of recognition. And you hear how much he loves Brooklyn and how
Mhm.
much Brooklyn loves him. And you watch that video of that fan bickering at Ben Simmons, and you can make whatever take that you want out of it. But the fact that Schroeder was in there, well, this is an off the court scenario where he was willing to step in for his guy. But then you see what he brings on the court. Again, this is somebody that really does embody what Sean Marks wants in this culture in Brooklyn, that Brooklyn grit. So it's going to be interesting. Again, this is a premature conversation, but it is one that's worth bringing up, given how much flexibility that they do have, and that
Mhm.
they're showing that they're relatively competent. Again, through the first 10 games of the season, but uh, they are competent. And they have a good coach. They have some good pieces that
Yeah.
like they might be lingering around that play-in spot.
Yeah. And it's a good story for Dennis too. Like he's been an established NBA player. He's won 6 Man of the Year. But he's also he's been a victim to the NBA being so much of a business where like he's been a good player really every year that he's been in the league, but he's been on a lot of different teams lately. So I think, it's good for him too that he's kind of like finding this the fan base appreciates him, and I think he appreciates the fan base and he appreciates the organization. He had a very funny caption on his Instagram a couple days ago when after the Grizzlies game, it was like in all caps and it was like, "Oh yeah, something along the lines of like, yeah, I know Judge did some crazy shit, but like, here, let's all like get together." And then it was like, fuck it, like Nets world win or something like that. Like those are the types
Yeah,
of things that juice up the fan base. I don't think he'd be celebrating it as much if he didn't rock with the fan base itself.
right. And we pondered if somebody like him would want out if they're so bad, or if he's playing back up
Yeah,
to Ben
I brought that
Simmons.
up. I
Right,
totally thought that because he's a veteran. You got to get your bag, but it's been all good stuff, all good stuff from Dennis.
right. And everything, like you said, can change with the blink of an eye. But
Hmm.
right now, it's smooth, and I would find it hard to believe that Marks would want to. If he's willing to stay here, he likes Brooklyn, no matter what the circumstances are. Come trade deadline, Sean Marks really likes having that veteran presence in the locker room. We've
Hmm.
seen it throughout the years from the day that he took over. He always liked having at least that one guy, and it seems like Schroeder is really sticking out as that guy to lead this unit and into the future. Whether he's here or not beyond this year is above my pay grade, but just at least for setting a foundation, setting a culture within that locker room. I
Yeah.
don't think Sean Marks would want to just give him up.
Hmm. And I think with the cap space the Nets are going to have next year, I'll leave it at this. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I don't think they're clearly focused on the future. They're not going to give the bag to an aging point guard, but I could see them finding a middle ground for a good amount of years and paying him, like what he deserves as a starting level point guard, like not a superstar. We unfortunately in basketball discourse we haven't yet, and Mikal Bridges is one of the biggest victims of this, where there we go superstar, all star, role player. There's a big
Right.
difference between a all star and a role player. We just haven't figured out a word for it yet, and Dennis Schroeder fits into that too. And they're good basketball players. That doesn't catch on as well, but
Well, I guess it's a good thing they haven't found a term for it, because the Nets just got 6 picks, 5
you're
picks
right.
for a role player slash star.
To the Knicks, he's an all star. To the Knicks, he's a superstar apparently. But
To the fan base, he's God. But look, he's 17 points per game on 50% shooting. He's doing what he needs to do in New York, but for 5 picks, that trade is looking better and better by the day.
yeah,
I was going to ask you who your biggest surprise is. I think that we have the answer in our spiel. Mine is Dennis Schroeder. I'm curious about you, if you have any other takes that you want to pull.
I've been because I covered two of the Nets preseason games, and there was a big discrepancy in terms of plus minus when Dennis Schroeder would come on and off the floor. And it was because Keon Johnson very much struggled in the preseason. He's a fast, athletic guy. He can get through that first line of defense, but he wasn't making the reads on the pass, and the shot wasn't really there, especially like when he was getting in the mid range or shooting out to the wing, things like that. He has been in the last couple of games. He's been fantastic. That game against Chicago, he had just like a slew of plays. Like he's probably not the most polished shooter. He's obviously undersized to the position, but he doesn't give a shit about any of that stuff. He comes out and he makes plays. He's very much playing like a. Now I'm going to use this analogy because we just watched the Nuggets play against the Nets, but almost like Russell Westbrook is on the Nuggets right now, where
Yeah,
maybe he's not, again, he doesn't have the most polished skill set, but he comes in and he just makes plays. He's a burst of energy. And hey, he's hit his threes in the regular season so far. I think he was two out of three from beyond the arc the other night. He pulls it enough to bring the defense out. And like they're not asking a whole lot out of him. It's really just that burn, at the beginning of the second quarter and beginning of the fourth quarter, things like that. But he comes in, he gives the team a jolt, he plays hard. I think he's one of the best guys who can link up with Jordy Fernandez and everything that he preaches. So I want to give props to Keon Johnson. He's been absolute spark plug off the bench. Kind of what maybe Shake will figure it out later in the year, but I know we both picked
yeah,
Shake as our most
yeah,
improved player of the year. He's kind of stepped into that role so far.
yeah. We had Shake as the sixth man. I was
That's what
really
it was. Yeah,
intrigued
Shake's
by
one.
Zaire Williams coming into the season. I've liked what I've seen from him. But again, when we talk about biggest surprise, Dennis Schroeder, 20 points, 7 assists. He's shooting 49% from three and 50% from the field. Like,
These are all-star numbers, what he's putting up now.
Yeah.
Like,
Now again, small sample size. I'm sure at some point it regresses to the mean, but a breath of fresh air, especially because we really did drill in the point that they didn't do anything at the point guard position.
mhm.
And you have Ben Simmons right now, and make what you want. He's averaging 6, 6, and 6 on 61.5% shooting. There are times where Ben just looks like like early in the game when he's aggressive and he's getting downhill, and this offense looks like it's moving and pumping, and then there are times where it falls apart. So we don't need to get into that. Has he surprised you? Has he disappointed you, or is it just kind of where your expectations were?
It's right where my expectations were, honestly. Like, I don't know. I feel bad for Ben. I'm kinda just, I'm a little tired out of the Ben talk, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
it's an
I wish the best out of him, but we don't talk about a guy who averages the numbers that he does and, like, doesn't, like, dunk the ball. Like, we don't talk about anyone else as much as we talk about Ben Simmons
I
anymore.
know.
So we're all rooting for him, but
Yeah.
maybe we're part of the issue. Maybe we still expect too much out of him. So maybe we need to dial it back, and then it'll be okay. Who
Yeah,
knows?
you know what? He's making $40 million a year.
Very good point.
It's absolutely a talking point. It's something
No, you're
that
right.
has hurt them more than helped them. But you're right. And if this was around the horn and you were Tony Rielli, you would put a mute button on me every single episode. But it's something that I want to check in on. He's a $40 million player. Might be a buyout candidate. We don't know. But
No, you're not
moving on,
alone either. Yeah.
yeah, it's an intriguing point. It's a storyline in the NBA, and honestly, maybe he'll be a buyout candidate that can really help another team. But for this Nets team, I'm not really sure. But like I said, maybe a mute button for your host here would
No,
go a long way.
never, never. Not after the herringbone rant. We need you.
Don't get me started with that. But Colin, and to the Brooklyn audience that's listening, whether it's live or whether it be after, we're going to do something since we do this bi-weekly. We're going to do a pick watch check-in that doesn't include the Brooklyn Nets. We have the Milwaukee Bucks pick 5 through 30, not top four, 5 through 30, and we have the Knicks picks. Colin, where are we checking in? I think the Bucks, we don't have theirs right now because they've been so bad.
Yeah, it's a weird situation right now. Like, you're obviously rooting for them to lose. It's kind of the same situation with the Nets winning. Like, you don't want them to win too much, but it's also like, oh, this is like also it's fun to win games, obviously. It's like you want Milwaukee to keep losing, but you don't want them to lose too much. Like, I don't think anyone really like a team with Giannis Antetokounmpo is not going to be the worst, one of the top four like worst teams in the league. You know what I mean? So at least there's like that is kind of like on the side of the thought process. But right now they're Tankathon has them at number one. They're one of the only teams with I think them and the Sixers, which is really funny, honestly. So it's like keep it up, but like don't try too hard now to be the worst team in the league.
Right. And with Chris Middleton, there's no indication of when he's coming back.
Yeah,
He's indefinitely. I'm more looking at, yes, right now where we are. The Nets are not getting their pick, but what happens if this team really is that bad and Giannis says, you know what, I don't want to be here anymore come trade deadline, right? Like that would be the worst case scenario
that
for
would be
them.
the worst thing. Yeah.
Then they're really, really gonna bottom out.
Mhm.
But that's an intriguing case to look at and keep an eye on because, like you said, there's a weird parallel with the Nets. You want them to kind of compete and be good enough to get that 5 through 30 spot, but not bad enough where
Mhm.
they're running for a top four. And I believe New Orleans would have their
Yeah, here we go to the
number 10 pick,
Pelicans.
right?
Yeah.
Through the Drew Holiday trade.
I don't know. I have no idea what that tracks back through. Could be. That's the only that I can think of between those two teams, but
Yeah.
who knows?
Again, premature, but this is something we're going to do every 2 weeks, a pick watch. Now we look across the river, not too far from where you are, Colin, with
Mhm.
the New York Knickerbockers. They are, if their season ended today, the Nets would have the number 17 pick in the NBA draft.
Correct.
That's not too bad.
No. For all the things we heard of, not none of those picks, all 6 of those picks are all gonna be bad picks. Yeah, okay, you crystal ball watchers, like, there's the Knicks are gonna figure out how to play together. I watched them last night. They still looked like a team that is still looking to find their groove. They will find their groove. There will be a good team, but like, let's have a little bit of respect for the NBA
Yeah.
being a league where we have no idea what the hell could happen.
Right.
So I think people expected the Knicks to start out better than they did. I mean, they were touted as the biggest like Celtics challenger, and they
Right.
haven't looked that way yet. Obviously, I'm going to say this 100 times this episode. It's the first week in November, and it is.
Right.
But that's another one to watch. And the East is really interesting right now. The East is 10-28, I believe, against the West, and the Brooklyn Nets are responsible for 2 of those wins. So the East just looks like a conundrum of muck right now. I have no idea how that's going to shake out, but because it's so bad, and it's like you never know what the deal is. Like, maybe don't buy in too much to the Knicks being bad early, because they're going to be able
No.
to make it up fast. But also root for the West, though. Like there could be the 7 seed, and it probably won't be this way, but the 7 seed in the West could be better than the 3 seed in the East in
Right.
terms of how the lottery or the wins shake out and stuff. I believe they still queue it up with. Well, a lot of teams go out in the first round, but that's the tiebreaker. And out of 8 teams, that could fall in that way.
We
Could
kind
be.
of saw a little bit of that last year too. Like
Mhm.
the distribution of star power and teams in the West versus East is just so mucky and confusing. But that
Mhm.
also puts the Nets in a weird position because anybody could come out in the East. Like anybody could
It's
finish
like
it.
the Big Ten and the ACC are the East and the West, and if
Yeah,
you look at it from a college football standpoint.
yeah. And I spoke to Joe Dumars, who's the VP at the NBPA about a year or two ago
Mhm.
when they incorporated the playing games. And I think we don't take enough stock into this, that like them adding 2 seeds into the playoff race and having 10 spots potentially available is absolutely crucial. And
Mhm.
like I said, like the Nets really could kind of trickle around that area, like, and you mentioned it too. It throws things into a blender.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not buying stock on the Knicks being bad. And this is not a Knicks podcast. We're not here to talk about them, but it's relevant to the conversation of the Nets tank and obviously having their pick.
Yeah.
I'm not buying stock into what we're seeing right now, but it is very clear that that team misses Isaiah Harden's team, and
Oh my god, yeah.
Carl Anthony Towns is such a skilled player, and I'm a fan of his on the offensive end. But what Hartenstein did for Brunson in the pick and roll, you're seeing it. It, it,
Mhm.
it is it is really really hurting them right now that they don't have that.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
So
I can't, like, I live with 4 Knicks fans, like, I'm so like, last night I could hear them cursing Jericho Sims through my walls, like, I totally agree with you, and I know they would too.
and Cat is going off. Like he's going off. He's putting up the numbers, but it's just not. I think when you have a player like that, especially a ball dominant big, the whole flow of your offense gets thrown off. So
Yeah.
keep an eye on them. Obviously, you're going to keep an eye on a very, very wide open ear with four Nick roommates.
Yeah.
Um, that's tough.
It is
Are you
just
and
as much fun as you can expect it to be.
Colin? Were you a Nets fan growing up?
I had a weird path to the Nets. So I'm all Giants. I'll make this short, but I'm all Giants, Yankees because of my dad, who's from New Jersey. But my dad, oddly enough, is not a Nets fan. He went to Boston College when Larry Bird was with the Celtics. So he bought into that. Really rubbed me the wrong way growing up. I was like, I hate the Red Sox. I hate the Patriots. I don't want to have like a Boston corner. So around the time I came to make that decision, the Nets were moving to Brooklyn, and I still had my Jersey ties because my dad was from New Jersey, and I'd spend my
Right.
summers to the Jersey Shore, so I got that going for me. And my side of the family, not a lot of like ball knowers, not a lot of big sports people, except for my grandmother on my mom's side. And so very close with her, talking sports. And she used to live in Brooklyn, was the biggest Brooklyn Dodgers fan in the world. Broke her heart when they moved. So I was like, I got the 3 prongs here. It's a New York team, so I can check that box. Jersey ties from my dad, and my grandma loves Brooklyn, from Brooklyn. It was like, I'm gonna get in with this startup team. So that's how it started.
So you were a Brooklyn Nets guy. You
Yes,
weren't you
not
weren't a
so.
big New
I
Jersey.
see. I was a big Vince Carter guy. I was more of an individual player fan growing up. One of those guys happened to be Vince Carter, so I was locked in with the. I was a little bit too young to really conceptualize their like finals runs. I was like
Yeah.
4, but
And shout out to VC. I mean, VC was my favorite player growing up. I mean, J Kid really gave me the keys to being a basketball fan, and I really wanted to learn from him. My dad wanted me to learn from him. We got season tickets when he was traded, but VC was my favorite.
Dunking is
Shout out,
so cool. Like that's really what it was. Like
yeah, yeah, and shout out to him. He got his jersey retired in Toronto. He's going to get his jersey retired by the Nets on January 25th, so we get to look forward to that in a couple of months, obviously down the line. But shout out to VCs on the Yes Network now. He's part of the Nets organization, which is really, really cool. It's a little bit odd because he was a New Jersey Net. He played in a different state, he played in a different arena. But to see him still have ties and still be here, see the fruits of his labor, get inducted to the Hall of Fame. I just wanted to give that like little shout out to VC because that as a Nets fan growing up and somebody who just absolutely was so inspired by that guy. It's like,
yeah.
man, it is so cool. And to see him sitting next to Ian Eagle and these folks be around Barclays Center, I'm sure you've seen him quite a
Mhm.
couple times now.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
good
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 stuff.
for the Nets, good for VC. I'm excited for January 25th.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
moving forward, Colin, to the mailbag. We got some good questions. We got two from Paul Tweets, RIP. Shout out, Paul. Did March actually pick a direction, or was Mikal Bridges' offer too good to pass up? Colin, I'm deferring to you.
I love this question because we can't go into Sean Marks's brain. We're never going to know the answer to it. But the in my opinion, the deal was just too good to pass up. Like the Nets were, I think they understand that they're in New York. They want to compete. They wanted to, Joe Tsai. I don't know if you believe it or not when he said like what competitions in my or winning is in my DNA or whatever. I don't
Yeah,
know. I kind of buy it. I feel like you only get to be that rich and that powerful a businessman if you really think that. So I think that they wanted to win. I think that every NBA GM, you have to be open to taking calls. Like anytime someone is like, there's a rumor when it's like, oh, are you like trading this guy? And the GM says like, yeah, like I'm not trying to trade him, but I'll listen to offers. Like that's what being a good GM is. Like you should always be ready to pivot to what the best option is for your franchise. Like who's the best? Like maybe someone like Luca doesn't have the he'd be the toughest one. But if someone up to the Dallas Mavericks and said, "Hey, trade me Luka Doncic, and I will give you my first round pick for the next 45 years," yeah, you're doing that. Like it's like at the end of the day, be part of being a GM is having your phone always open in case someone comes to you with what was for the Nets a crazy offer. Mikal Bridges is not worth anything close to those picks. And I think that was a franchise altering moment where they were like, all right, it's just too good to pass up,
right, right. And,
What
and
do you
you look at that team last year. Nobody on the Brooklyn Nets roster should have ever been untouchable. As much as they touted him and they really put him on, I do think that added the trade value. My answer is going to be the latter. I
Mhm.
think that they believed in him, but as the season progressed and as you saw things go on, and Mikhail kind of, now I don't want to say quit on the team, but really, really not hone in on being the franchise guy, not really wanting to be there. And come trade deadline, having conversations with his Knicks buddies and telling them, hey, why don't you tell Leon to call Sean? Sean Marks is hearing these conversations. He's seeing body language. It's not like he's one of us sitting at home who doesn't have any feel for
Mhm.
how a player is feeling in his organization,
Yeah.
right? I think that he really, really, really tried to make it work. But as I say, sometimes there's an offer that you simply cannot refuse. And on the flip side of that, um, to his credit, like he really bolstered Mikhail up after that 27 game skit where he averaged 20 whatever 27 points per game, whatever it was. Like he played the situation correct. He put the word out there that Mikal Bridges was absolutely an all-star that you want to build your team around.
Mhm.
But I also think like there's that mix of, yeah, how are we gonna pass this up? This guy is absolutely not untradeable. He
Yeah.
is not untouchable. There is no reason for us to not do this
And you
trade.
and to the point to anyone who says like, "Oh, he's untouchable," thinking, "Oh yeah, like he's saying that because Sean Marks totally wants to build around him." That's just not true. Saying a guy is untouchable does nothing. There's no harm that comes from that. You're either telling the player on your team, "We believe in you," you're pushing that morale, awesome, or you're saying, "Hey, give me your best offer. I'm driving his price up right
Right,
now." So
right,
GMs are going to throw that out as much as they want, as they should. Everything's
right.
a negotiation. Everything's a mind game.
Right. My
especially
answer
when it's being fed to Shams or Woj before it even gets to us.
right. My answer again is the latter. I think that again, like Paul is asking, like, did he want to pick a direction? I think that he did it. Like, obviously, he wants to pick a direction, but he didn't want to be impulsive with it.
Mhm.
Right? He wasn't gonna like we just mentioned before. He doesn't make very big trades at the deadline
Yeah.
because he wants to reassess in the summer. You see, all their big trades outside of Harden came in the summer. Like that's what he did. He reevaluated the situation. He looked at things from a big picture instead of a microscopic. Now, obviously, we as journalists, as media members, as fans, as whatever, were like, please, please, please pick a direction. And clearly, the direction last year was limbo. So he made the right one. Here we are today, having a healthy, happy conversation about the Nets. We've moved on from Mikal Bridges, but we're going to keep an eye on the Knicks because of the pick situation. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is also from Paul Tweets RIP. Colin, do you think that we'll see trades after December 15th, or will it all around be just the deadline?
I think your monologue might have answered this. We don't see a whole lot of trade deadline trades to begin with. So I'm going to lean with no. We're not going to see a whole lot. I feel like just because this isn't a Nets thing, this is just like I think of how NBA fans think thing. Like, yeah, games are back, but there's not a whole lot of transactional stuff going on right now. Half the guys who just signed deals aren't even eligible to get traded yet. So we circle that December 15th date on our calendar and we stare at it for 2 months and like get ourselves to think like, oh, maybe we'll see some fireworks. And it usually doesn't happen. And I think the other
Right.
half of it, so maybe falling into that rabbit hole. And the other half of it is that, like you said, Sean Marks usually doesn't make trades unless he like has to, or unless like he made trades at the deadline last year, but it's because he knew Royce O'Neal was going to leave. He knew Spencer Dinwiddie was going to leave. He
Right.
wanted to get return on whatever
Right.
was left of his investment at that point. So I think, yes, he will wait because that's what we've seen from him. And two, it might be smart the way Cam Johnson is shooting the ball to trade him right now. It might be tougher than it is with his contract. That's a whole nother discussion, but I
Yeah.
think he'll wait. He'll give these guys as much time as he can to drive up their value. I don't know that I totally agree with that because I do think there is value in I can trade for this guy in December and get 60 games out of him versus I trade for him in February and get 40 games out of him. But the sense I'm getting is that he'll wait to the trade deadline, if anything. What do you
Yeah.
think?
No, I'm right with you. I think the way that we've seen Shaw Marks operate again. That seems to be my key bingo word today is the way that Sean Marks operates. But the only case scenario where I see him impulsively rushing a trade is either one, he gets an offer that he can't refuse, or two, how we've seen him in the past. If a veteran and their agent come up to him and say, "We don't want to be here anymore. Would you do the right thing by us?" Then he does it. Like we saw
Mhm.
it with the Joe Johnson buyout, and we've seen it in numerous occasions, and several occasions with Sean Marks that if a veteran player that simply doesn't want to be here anymore, then he'll show them the door in the most respectful and polite way possible while
Yeah.
also getting what he needs to get back. So I don't think that we see a trade at December 15th. I think we see it, if at all, at the trade deadline.
Yeah, 100%.
So I'm moving on. D Rock. D Rock is one of the, I want to give him a shout out, one of the most
Yes, sir.
popular and dedicated and passionate Brooklyn podcast followers. So shout out to D Rock. D Rock's got the question, Colin, who stands out as a keeper on this team? The way that D Rock sees it, we have a group of role players that fit better than the Nets anticipated, but no main piece that connects everybody. That's a
Dennis
D Rock.
Schroeder in terms of what he's given the team and the tenacity and seems like a guy who fits what Jordy Fernandez is preaching and Brooklyn grit. I said this earlier, or I said this last year when they traded for him. I was like, I don't know. He's an aging veteran, direction of the team if he's going to stick around, but if he does, I think Nets fans are going to fall in love with Dennis Schroeder, and I think we're already seeing that. So he strikes me as the guy where like Jared Dudley didn't stick around after that year, but he was like kind of like a core guy that like people were calling for him to be like an assistant head coach. That's how much he seemed to be liked by the team and liked in the building. I feel like I said earlier, we're gonna have all this cap space. Like he would make sense if you can find the right number that works for everyone. That yeah, you bring him back and you make him. He just seems like a guy that exudes what the Nets want to build around. Like maybe
Yeah.
not in terms of
Yeah.
like skill set with his age or his future with his age and stuff, but in terms of his tenacity and what he brings from personality standpoint and an effort standpoint. How about
Yeah.
you?
It depends. It depends what direction they want to go into, right? And it depends what Dennis Schroeder wants to. Again, how Shaw Marks wants to appeal to his veteran players and his agents, but Schroeder's up there. I mean, it would be easy for me to say Cam Thomas. Like if you're looking to build young, but also have a reason for some star players to want to come here. This is a
Yeah.
proven bucket getter that's averaging 25 a game this season and has proven night in and night out, year in and year out that he's been in the NBA that he could drop 40 on any given night if given the opportunity.
Hmm.
Now, again, it depends where they want to go after this season. I don't know if D-Rock is talking about this season or beyond. I'm looking at this question as who are we going to keep after this season? Who are we going to keep after the deadline that's a gel guy, that's somebody. So Cam Thomas in that context would not fit. Dennis Schroeder in that context would fit.
Hmm.
Um, Otherwise, I don't really have an answer. I don't think that we've really seen enough of Nick Claxton yet. Obviously, they just signed him to a big deal, but
Yeah.
that he's not going anywhere, at least as far as we know. Um,
I don't
but
know.
no,
I
I don't have anybody.
looking at it back from your lens, like when I addressed, I kind of just thought of like Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Schroeder, like those guys. But looking at the younger guys, I like Claxton, even though I think we would like to maybe see a little bit more out of it. Like I'm totally like sheltering up my take right now, like softening it up. But no, like he hasn't looked like he hasn't been like a top like 5 like big in the league or anything like that. But I have been a fan of his skill set from the jump in terms of how it. So when we're talking about the future of the Nets, future of the league, his skill set is so built for the future with how he can switch, how he can guard at so many different positions. Shooting, I mean, you're not going to rely on him to be a shooter, but he's popping a little mid range from here and here. But as long as he's as fast as he is and is as long as he is, like he just fits the build as so much of a modern center. I've said for years that if the Nets ever chose to trade him, he would go to somewhere like Golden State or the
Yeah,
Mavs have Derek Lively right now, but that was a team I used to say before. He would go to somewhere that has a like 1A like point guard, play the pick and roll, be a defensive anchor, and generate points on the break and just be a huge difference maker. Like I can see Nick Claxton going somewhere and just being an absolute like stud and all over like Sports Center because
yep,
like he's not their best player, but he's just making impact play after play after play. Like we've seen it where
yeah,
he'll block and then go coast to coast. So I think in terms of guys that his game translates so much to where the game is headed in terms of versatile bigs, like no
yes.
longer back to the basket guys. So I like him as a guy to keep an eye on.
And he hasn't even touched his prime. He's 25 years old.
Yeah.
You got him on a long contract again, for whatever it might be, and wherever it's going, whether it's a rebuild or whether it's a rebuild in the short term, and then we move forward and grab some stars. That's somebody that you want on your team. You have the center position filled, and you could rely on him to do the things that you mentioned. Have flexibility, be versatile, switch on to different defenders 1 through 5.
Mm,
He does it all, fits the script. Like you said, in the right situation, Nick Claxton is a guy that you want on your team. That's a great answer, Colin.
thank you.
So we're going to move forward and call this. The Nets have the Celtics on the first night of a back-to-back. That's Friday night. And then we get to see some familiar faces with Kenny Atkinson, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen,
That's gonna be
Jared
a fun one.
Dudley,
Yeah.
DeMare Carroll, Jordan Ott. I mean, you got the whole old 18-19 Net squad. Expect to see all of them in Cleveland, 9-0, but
Hmm.
don't expect to see Ben Simmons in one of those 2 games.
That's a very good way of queuing it up. No, that whatever picture they all take before the game is gonna go triple platinum on Nets Twitter. Like it's gonna be so wholesome. That'll
Yeah.
be a fun one.
Colin, anything you want to say before we log out?
No, bring it back to what I said earlier. We can still tank. We can still get Cooper Flagg. We can still get Ace Bailey. But right now, we're getting fun basketball. So enjoy this moment, Nets fans. It's a weird spot. It always is a weird spot in Nets world, but it's sunny skies right now. So soak it in as much as you can.
It's called the present for a reason, right, Colin?
Damn right.
All right, folks. Follow us on the Brooklyn Pod on X, on Instagram, on TikTok, whatever it is, whatever social media platform it is. We are at The Brooklyn Pod. If you want to shoot us an email, you want to shoot us a question, get in the mailbag, whatever it might be. Email us at thebrooklynpod@gmail.com. That's thebrooklynpod@gmail.com. So, folks, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Again, first night of a back-to-back against the Boston Celtics on Friday. And as I always say, it's been real. It's been nice. In other words, it's been real nice.